Evil, bro.
Yes.
Well, I hope so. I hope it, yeah.
I hope it kicks.
Hope it kicks.
Dave, on something like
First is
that.
Eric, seconded by Cindy. Okay, now we can have discussion.
It was seconded by Eric.
I didn't make, I just said.
No, you made it. I heard you as the maker of the motion.
Fine, that's fine, I'll make the motion, seconded by Eric.
Okay. Discussion. Mr. Hilder.
When I worked at the school district, we were very careful about having the school district name be utilized for any advertisement. So, well, the intent might be good. Some legal, we need to get them.
The school's made the request. We've already gotten the legal advice.
I already spoke to the city attorney.
The city
The
attorney.
city attorney's already said this is what you need to do.
Because some of the administrators don't know what the rules are.
I don't care.
Well, that's why he asked. He asked,
Why we asked.
he emailed me, can I use the logo?
We need it for outreach.
I emailed the city attorney, he said it's fine, just have
Our
to work.
ticking robot is outreach.
Here you go.
All right. On the motion, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those, a voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carries unanimously. Now we'll get to number 5. Report of the Grievance Panel regarding Mr. Kuzmi's grievance, discussion of possible board action regarding the recommendations from the Grievance Panel, which may include referral to the Bylaws and Rules Committee and other committees as applicable, or other actions by the board as the board deems appropriate. Mr. Matthews, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thanks very much indeed, Dave. So I want everybody to pay attention for the next little bit. I'm sorry it's so late, but this is very important. The good news is that there is minimal discussion on what we're going to hear tonight. We've just received the information and you all have a chance to look over it and peruse it. So having said that, let's get into the meat of this. The grievance was filed in October by Mr. William Kuzmin, who's present with us tonight. List of specific items in his grievance. In his grievance under Article 11 of the bylaws, we formed, this was my responsibility to facilitate this, we formed a randomly selected panel of 5 volunteer stakeholders. 4 of the stakeholders are in the room with us this evening, and we welcome them. Those stakeholders, the panel of 5, formed themselves into a grievance panel. Their charter was to hold a hearing meeting with Mr. Kuzmin, come up with a report on findings and recommendations, and then to present that report. The committee, I know, spent an awful lot of time on this. They are here tonight to present the report. I will note again that tonight is not the forum to discuss or remonstrate about any content of the report. The only discussion we're going to have after the report is presented is some administrative discussion on how we're going to disseminate the report to the board and various committees to take action on it in future general meetings like this one. Having said that, I would like to present the person who came forward as the chairman of the grievance panel to take it from here, and that's Mr. Jeffrey Bora.
Good evening, thank you everybody. Again, my name is Jeffrey Borer. Just to give you a quick rundown of who the panel, the committee was: Linda Romney, Lonnie Turmel, Ralph Croy, Scott Tretzky, and myself. The report comprises about 8 pages of text, followed by exhibits 1 through 4 of an additional 20 pages. Now, I know that at least the majority of the board, if not all of them, have not had a chance to review the report. As Anthony said, we spent quite a bit of time on it. We had about 6 hours of meetings, plus emails and phones back and forth. I'm going to hit some of the high points. I'm sure once the board goes over it, it's going to find its way into an agenda, probably at the next meeting, and in no event later than the one after that. I guess the report is critical of the council, of the board, but it's not all bad. In fact, the committee sided with the council, probably on a ratio of at least 2 to 1. The majority of the report didn't really make findings, but rather made recommendations. But at least a third of the 38 different grievances, there were findings on. In a nutshell, what we found are as follows. In terms of meetings, the postings of the time, the content, voices being heard, all those things, there are specific rules that govern. And we're talking about bump and dawn and ground, all those things. And let's face it, you guys, the board itself, the council, are not professional politicians. They're here, they give a lot of their time. The problem is that bump, done, brown, and all these other governing rules mandate that they are every bit as professional politicians as Yoroslavsky or anybody else on the board. It's just what is. These rules that are put into place are not discretionary, they're mandatory. And they're quite lengthy and they're quite exacting. And a violation of them, as you've already known, can and has already, in a few instances, put you guys on the wrong side of Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. We have seen that, either, I'm not going to say purposely or accidentally, but there are issues of conflict of interest that haven't been addressed. What we would like to see, and what I think mostly of what our recommendations are, is that there has to be, and I know we were just discussing it here, that you guys have rewritten your bylaws within the past, it was 2011 that you guys last did it? I think the only way that we're going to get past this is for some kind of rules committee to go over the bylaws again and shore it up, because there are many holes there. There are many ambiguities. There are structures that aren't being followed. All these things that have to be addressed and rectified to form a solid base, so that anything that's built on top of that base is going to withstand anything that members at large, stakeholders, public, or anything like that is going to throw at you. And they're going to, as the grievance shows, there's fertile ground where the board, where the council is not following the demanded structure. So we're just, I'm going to leave it to you at that point. I've just laid out the main points here. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them. I don't think it's the time or place, and I think Anthony agrees, that we're not going to debate all 38 of the findings and recommendations in the report. So with that, if anyone has any questions, again, I would like to thank my fellow committee and thank Anthony and thank the council for giving our report all the due what it's due and what it is and what level it is. I guess we're going to find out in the meetings to come. So, any questions? Yes.
I have one. Now, as far as the purpose of the committee, was the committee, I'm not clear on exactly what the committee was supposed to do. Is it? Well, let me finish the question. Is it an advocate for the grievant in order to better present the grievance, or is it an arbiter or a finder of fact to look at what's happened and try to determine if there's anything that needs to be resolved?
Glad you asked that. The one thing we were not was advocates. We were presented with a writing called a grievance. We were then presented with two writings that were together in response, the council's response to those grievances. We took that and with a considerable amount of other exhibits, a resolution passed by this council, letters from the council, letters from the district attorney. We took all those things and a fair amount of our own personal knowledge, our background as well. And we were, I guess our mandate was to take the grievance, to take the response, and to act as neutrals to make specific recommendations about those grievances, as well as where plausible and where possible, to make a finding as to whether the grievant was correct or whether the board was correct. but we were absolutely not advocates in any way, manner, shape, or form.
Well, let me bring up one specific instance. At a prior meeting, the grievant presented photographs of a few of our posting locations that were devoid of a posting within 2 days of the meeting, and presented that as proof that we hadn't performed our postings. Now, it happened to be my September 25th meeting of the Plum Committee, and I happened to take pictures of postings that I had done on September 21st at noon and 12:15. Now, I only took 2 pictures. I figured by taking those, it would be obvious that I'd made the rounds and made the postings. So, you know, to make a finding that we had not made the posting requirements based on, you know, I'm just assuming what you saw was negative evidence of pictures of blank walls, or somebody's testimony. Nobody asked me for any showing that I had actually posted these.
Well-
And so I think that finding was made in a vacuum.
Well, first off, without you telling me exactly which finding you're referring to, I can't answer. I can tell you that the panel, I don't believe, and I think my fellow committee members might be able to back me up on that, I don't think we saw a single photograph that we used for any purposes. Nor did we make any findings on any of the grievances that where we were faced with a he said, she said. I don't think any of us in the committee would have stepped into that position as a finding of fact of who's telling the truth and who's not. We took the grievance basis and we took the response basis and we made a decision based on those 2 documents. If Mr. Kuzman had made a grievance and made a factual contention that on January 28th of 2013, XYZ happened, and without any kind of evidence or presented like that, and in the council's response, it said, no, on January 28th, that never happened. Well, without anything else, we would not have made a finding in favor or against either party. What we probably would have done in that respect is, well, here is the issue, we can make a recommendation. If this is not happening, then it should be happening, and this is how we think it should go. We did not delve into the he said, she said.
Okay, because actually I don't see it in this copy. I thought that I saw something in another version.
All right, so I don't want to cut you off, but I think we need time to look at the report and specific things. One of the whole aspects, and that was the setup, I won't say instruction, but advice that I gave to the panel and to Jeffrey, was that we should be, was to have their report be forward-looking in terms of things that, you know, recommendations on the way to go forward. I mean, nobody thinks it's productive at all to go back and look at specific incidences and point the finger.
Well, excuse me, that's inflammatory language right there. Okay, first off, I know exactly the reference that you're citing, because there's a reference in the findings from the panel about the district attorney's letter. And his response is directly to one of the things that's raised in the district attorney's letter. So, I understand your point that it's well past time to move on, but nonetheless, there are, in this packet, including the supplementary materials, there are specific allegations. And to simply say that there are significant issues here, and I think given the time of the evening and the length of this material, I can only ask that we
Well, no, I agree. I think we should, I don't think we should get into the issues here, and that's what we said to start. But I think that whatever's in this report, you know, from a very valid independent panel, should be very seriously and carefully looked at. I just don't.
Okay.
I just don't think tonight is the night to do it, and that's what we said. Tonight was the night where the report was officially handed over to council, and now we've got to, what we're going to do as of now is to figure out how we're going to look at it, who's going to look at it, and what steps we're going to take as a result of what's in the report.
Certainly, pardon me.
Let me go to Dave.
Yeah. Jeffrey, there was an initial letter sent to Mr. Kuzman denying 22 of the 37 or 38 or 40 of the alleged grievances that you filed.
Yes, if I can just interrupt you there, when I said that there was a document that had the complaint and there were 2 documents in response, you submitted 2 different documents. One that was just denials, and the other had substantive responses in opposition to the grievance. So
I haven't completed my question, so let me complete it. Were you aware that those 22 denials were the recommendation and the specific advice given to us by the city attorney? And in fact, that the letter had been drafted by the city attorney?
No, we did not.
The other question I guess I have is did you interview any other stakeholders regarding any of these allegations, or any board members regarding any of these allegations?
No, we did not.
All right, thank you.
Ross.
How did you come to writing the report? Did you have a vote among the judges, or was it, how many people were involved in each one of these responses?
All 5 of us were involved in every single response.
But was there a vote between the 5?
A vote? Yes, I would have to say there was. It wasn't a, can I have a show of hands? We were here probably, I think, next door, and there were only 5 of us. So it was, we read the individual grievance, we read the response, which is why, as I said before, and I'm going to address Mr. Bouvet's question. No, we didn't have to interview other people because we didn't weigh who was right and who was wrong. We took the complaint in black and white, and we took the response in black and white. There was 1 or 2 of these where the denial was based on that there was no law requiring the council to act as X, Y, and Z. And then we went to one of the exhibits and looked, and we saw black and white, there is an obligation for the council to act under these circumstances. So we took the black and white from the complaint, we took the black and white from the response, and then we went to our other materials and we made our decision based on that.
And so the grievance was in the room the entire time, providing the evidence to the grievance?
Yes.
While you were voting?
No, while we were voting,
Deciding.
Without the grievance.
no, without the grievance. He was in there to explain some things, and we had asked him to step out of the room several times.
Yeah, sorry, Bonnie.
I was a little confused by some of it. For example, maybe I'm wrong, but some of the grievances were, our bylaws don't say X, Y, and Z, and I have a grievance that the bylaws don't say X, Y, and Z. And are your recommendations saying that we should amend our bylaws to say X, Y, and Z to satisfy a particular grievance person?
No, we never made a recommendation. We didn't back into this on making a recommendation to conform to satisfy the grievance. That we didn't do. What we did in a lot of instances, we found an ambiguity in the language of the bylaws. And we made a recommendation that that language be shorn up to take care of the ambiguity. In fact, you'll see in quite a few of the grievances, we'll say, while we do not find a violation of the bylaws, we do make a recommendation of X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Okay, Maria, then I'll come back to Jerry.
Yes, I have a question. In setting up a process such as you have, and when you're airing complaints versus bylaws and things like that. If you have a grievant present, in fairness, don't you think that you should have a representative from the neighborhood council also present to verbally state what the, what the counter arguments may be? It almost seems a little bit lopsided. I can see if you had black and white, grievance in writing, and then you as a committee take responses only. But to have a grievant present without having a counter argument from somebody else present, I do feel that's a bit lopsided. Can you explain?
I cannot, simply because I didn't make the rules. Our committee was charged with and instructed in a certain manner. We followed that. We had nothing to do with who was there, who wasn't there. So I would defer to Anthony over here. I simply can't answer that question.
Okay, I would like, Maria, I would like to respond to that.
Yeah,
I would
please
like
do.
to say, again, this is not, and I'll repeat that, not. This is not a finding of who is right or who is wrong. It is not a court of law. It says that the grievance panel is there to I'll tell you exactly what the statement is out of our bylaws in the grievance process. Article 11, Section 4. The Secretary will coordinate, that's what I did, a time and a place for the panel to meet with the person submitting the grievance to submit resolutions. The meeting shall be held in 14 days, blah, blah, blah. After hearing the grievance, the panel will deliberate solutions and draft a report and recommendations for presentation at the regularly scheduled board meeting. This is not in any form a finding of right and wrong. They listened to the grievance, they evaluated the grievance, and now they're presenting their findings and recommendations.
Yes, I understand that, but I see a flaw in that system. I know, but I do see a flaw in that system is that if a person can present verbally on one hand, it's like a public, similar to a public hearing or any kind of a arbitration or any kind of a court or anything like that. If you are allowed to have one side present in person verbally and the other side can only respond in writing, I see a flaw.
Hold on. Let me address that. You're a little off.
And please explain, because I like to.
Mr. Kuzmin did not present his grievances to us. His grievance to the committee was presented by way of a black and white document. He was there to answer questions. It was to explain if we had any questions on the black and white. I do understand, I do see what you're saying, that you would like someone there to explain that as well. I got it. But I do want to make the differentiation.
I appreciate that, but in the same sense of physical presence of counter arguments should be made available.
In that case, this whole thing becomes a finding of right or wrong, a tribunal, and it's not that. It's a panel hearing at which findings and recommendations are afterwards presented, not a verdict.
Well, then it looks as though it becomes almost an impartial recommendation, in my estimation.
Well, maybe it is an impartial recommendation, but it's a panel of independent people that came forth out of the community.
Hold on a second. This was as impartial as you could ever get. And that is evidenced by, maybe Mr. Kuzmin was there, but the fact is that we found against Mr. Kuzmin over 2-to-1 ratio. So that is the first thing of all the questions here that I have to really take exception to. And of course, I didn't say this at the beginning, we have everyone here, the other 3 members, Mr. Scott is not here, but if anything I'm saying, if I'm mistaken or if I misspeak, I invite and implore my fellow committee members to stand up and correct me if I'm wrong anyway.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is let me. Brandon's had his hand up for a long time, and so has Jerry, and then I know that Linda wants to chime in for Jeffrey, and so does Ralph. So Brandon, you go
This
first.
is more of a comment. Aside from the obvious shortfall of the procedure, you did mention that everyone is impartial. You can speak for everybody?
I'm sorry?
You can speak for everybody, that everyone on the panel was impartial.
I don't know what's in someone's heart. All I can say is I chaired the committee. I am a litigator, that's what I do. I talk to juries. When they render their verdict, I talk to them afterward. I have a pretty good feel. Sure, everyone here, every single person in the committee has more experience in the Granada Hills Council than I do. All I can tell you is that we gave due deference to each side. And I do not believe, I didn't see a hint of any kind of agenda or prejudice from any of my committee members.
I'll take your word for that.
As a courtesy from one member of the bar to the other.
Well, one member of the bar, but I am those members. Yeah.
No, you have to understand, I wouldn't lie about that if I'm not getting paid.
We're not taking you there.
I don't find that.
Thank you.
I do not find that.
Yeah, and I believe you that you would
That's the
do
core.
your
That's
due
the
diligence
core
in
of
this,
a
but, in a couple of the words that I heard here, Anthony said that you would evaluate the grievance. And, the evaluation goes back to Maria's comment that you've got to evaluate that by getting an amplified explanation from the grievant to clarify the grievance items, as well as an amplified response from the respondent, in this case, Dave or whoever, to see what the context of the responses are. In this case, it's something as fundamental as understanding that the responses that come from the city attorney's office. I mean, that would, I think, change your view on the authority behind the responses and given them more weight. And another thing that very much concerns me here, in just, if we're passing these findings off to committee to act on, that's an implicit indication that we've said, okay, these are good, let's go and act on them. I think that the process was somewhat incomplete, and what I'm concerned about is that the report, being public information right now, will be up on the internet tomorrow with an indication that says, see, I was right. We got this against the neighborhood council. And to that end, I wouldn't want to see us go, well, we don't agree with a handful of these statements, so we're just going to ignore them, because that wouldn't be right. But on the other hand, I don't know that we can just blanket accept this. I think we've got to look to have this some further consideration made to it with input, things like the fact that the letter that Dave wrote actually came to the city attorney with some further investigation, deference, as you put it, to the people on the council who may have, may be the ones that are being accused of not making postings or following bylaws.
As to the procedure, I cannot speak to it. Well above my pay grade. As far as whether the letter was written from the district attorney or not, if there was such a letter, the city attorney.
City of Los Angeles is counsel for the neighborhood council.
I'm sorry, I did not hear that.
The city attorney of the city of Los Angeles is of counsel for the neighborhood councils across the city. It's not the DA's office, that's a different function entirely, and that's a different letter entirely.
All right.
The response that was provided to the grievant came from the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office.
Why wasn't on city attorney stationery?
Because the neighborhood council is the client, first of all, but is the entity that has to respond
To this grievance.
to this grievance.
I have no answer to that. All the committee could do is make a decision based on the documents tendered to it.
That's exactly right. Linda?
Yeah, in clarification to Maria's comment and Jerry's, specifically, we followed the grievance procedure that this neighborhood council put in writing in their bylaws. And specifically, it did not state that we were to have other individuals come in, or that we were to consider any documentation in response by the neighborhood council. Now, you wrote the bylaws, and we followed them to the letter. And that is exactly what we did.
Okay, I'm gonna let Jerry respond to that, and then we're gonna.
I just want to address your comment about following the procedures of the bylaws. The bylaws require a random selection of stakeholders performed by an approved process approved by the council, which in this council is basically drawing names out of a hat. We did that, but the committee went further, and a decision was made to relieve some of the randomly selected members and essentially perform some hand picking. I think that was there is nothing in the bylaws that says that you can choose to take a member off from the randomly selected group. So, I mean, if we want to talk about following the bylaws, I'd throw that in as well.
All right, so let me tell you what happened there. Okay, I came up with the original name of the 5 people. Mr. Cusman stated that he would object 2 of those people because they were members of subcommittees, actual members of committees related to the subject matter of the grievances. And therefore, he and I agreed.
There is no provision in the bylaws.
There is no provision in the bylaws to not do this. He and I agreed that if we dropped those names, we would come up with 2 more random people who were completely separate from the committee, and that's exactly what we did. From this council.
You got a problem there.
We got a problem.
You got a person who was on that committee who has had a history of objecting to this council. It goes back almost to the beginning of the neighborhood council.
Well,
And the 4 of us who've been claimed we were always here were named as people that she objected to. So you do not have somebody who was on that panel who did not already have a dog in the fight.
we had 2 people who were on the panel who, it seemed to me, and it was my job to facilitate this, were involved in, for the subject matter of the grievance, because they were on subcommittees. And so therefore,
Just because she's not longer on a subcommittee, she used to be on a number of committees, just because she was not now, does not mean that she doesn't have a grievance. She has a huge grievance in this committee.
well,
It is historical. It's documented.
I have a problem. I just need some clarification, I'm sorry. So the bylaws state that they're supposed to have the grievance read to them. And then what are they supposed to do after the grievance was read? Are they supposed to go separately and then decide? Or no?
it says after hearing the grievance, the panel will deliberate solutions. That's exactly how it
After
goes.
hearing the grievance, they'll deliberate the solutions. So
Yes.
did that happen?
Yes.
Did you separate yourself from Mr. Kuzma and deliberate?
Hold on a second. You're seeing here a pervasive problem, and that is the interpretation of the bylaws. Okay? If you want to take the literalistic view of it, we violated this bylaw. Why? Because between the time we heard from Mr. Kuzman of the grievance until the time that we got together and hashed it out, we did something else in between. We listened to the other side. Well, according to those bylaws, we weren't allowed to do that. But how literal are you going to take it? Wouldn't that be just asinine to listen to one side and then go straight into deliberations?
Sure, I guess I'm trying to get to the bottom of, was there any separation? Because it appears on the face of the way the bylaws read. The grievance has to be read. Then you have to deliberate on the grievance. Was there a bifurcation anywhere?
It has to
Follow
be
the bylaws.
separated.
I think what Ross is asking is, did you deliberate as a panel separately from Mr. Oswald?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. There were times where we had to bring Mr. Kuzman in because the issues were so ambiguous that we were flailing You know, it was Han Solo having to plot the course before going into hyperspace or smack into a star. That's where we were. We did the best we could with the tools that were given to us at the time.
Let me let Ralph talk because he was a member of this panel.
We've had a very, very active discussion. In fact, there was a time when I was thinking of writing a dissenting opinion, so, and I don't intend to, but we voted and we settled our arguments, but we did have a very, very active discussion. You know, to say that we didn't, I mean, we did have.
Okay, Maria.
Yeah, Anthony, going back to the selection of the members, you basically drew names out of a hat, correct? 5 names.
I did, yeah.
Is that correct?
And I had a witness for that, so I did that.
Oh, okay, that's okay. And then 2 of them were discredited?
2 of them were discredited because they were on committee. They were currently active on committees, the subject of which were part of the grievance.
Who made that recommendation to discredit these 2 individuals?
Well, that was me. My job, I did that unilaterally. My job was to...
I heard just a minute ago, and it's on tape, that it was on Mr. Kuzma's recommendations.
It was Mr. Kuzma. It wasn't Mr. Kuzma's recommendations. Mr. Kuzma said he would object to those 2 persons, and I said to him, if I find 2 more completely random people, will you accept those people? And he said yes, and that's how we did it.
I do find a bit of a conflict right there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if you are taking recommendations from a grievance of who and who will not be on a panel, I think that is incredibly flawed.
Yeah.
Am I wrong, or am I?
No, it's like jury selection. So
No, that's not jury selection.
1 year goes both ways.
Because you were taking recommendations based on one side only. Thank you.
I wonder if I can play 21 like that.
Dave.
Anthony, I'd like to make a motion at this time. You have the chair, so I think I'm able to make it. I'd like to move that the committees, first of all, give the board's thanks to the committee's work here. I think they've done, before I make the motion, I will point out that, you know, if nothing else, perhaps this has pointed out to us that there needs to be some improvements in the language in the grievance process. So if nothing else comes of this, perhaps we've learned that. I would like to make a motion that this report be referred to the executive committee, which in turn should come back no later than the March meeting with recommendations to either refer some of these to appropriate committee or make a recommendation otherwise to act on the grievance panel's recommendation. Second.
Okay. You mean the March? You do mean the March meeting, not the February meeting?
I mean the March meeting gives us plenty of time to work on it.
Okay, so we have a motion to refer this to the executive committee. That's the committee of 4 people comprising myself, Dave, Brad Smith, and Brandon, to meet, review the report, and determine how we're going to handle
Well,
following the directive.
obviously, some of these recommendations, a very number of them, are recommendations for the bylaws to be, you know, to take a look at the bylaws. I think those properly would be in the bylaws committee. But there's others that simply make a finding. I think there needs to be some preliminary work done by a committee, and I think the executive proper committee to do that in order to make a recommendation to accept the recommendation, reject it, or to accept it in some kind of modified fashion.
Okay.
So that's basically my motion.
If we make that motion and it passes, does that mean that the executive committee then has the authority to do whatever it comes up with in it? Let's say we meet next week, the executive committee, and we decide that we're going to put the board here, in such and such committee and do that. Is the executive board authorized to do that on its own behest without the section?
Well, no, the executive board would only come back with a recommendation to the board on each one of these.
Okay.
In other words, I'm not saying the executive committee should make a decision on any of these, but I think they should make a recommendation. For instance, this needs to go to the bylaws and rules committee, this finding needs to be rejected, this finding needs to be adopted, this finding can be modified, and so on, and make a recommendation, then the board should vote on each of those.
Okay, so we should not actually send it to any of those committees until the executive committee comes back?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so that's the motion on the floor, is to send it back to the executive committee?
Already seconded.
Okay, already seconded. Let's just take a voice vote on this. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ross, any abstain? Okay, Ross and Jerry opposed. Do you want us to take a voice, hand vote on this? Okay, any abstentions?
Yeah, I'm gonna abstain, because we actually had something we wanted to ask about posting on this, and we didn't ask for discussion.
Okay, point of order, no discussion.
Point of order, there was no discussion. What we wanted to ask, is this gonna be posted anywhere? Is this going out to the public? Like Gary had asked earlier, is this gonna end up on the internet in its
Public information.
Well,
It is
yeah,
public.
it's public, it can be posted by whoever feels they need to post it.
It's my I agree with all the arguments that it's probably not wise to post it prematurely, but it is public information, and it seems how that's part and parcel of the whole subject matter of this obviously controversial and emotional subject. I would say we have to post it, but I will defer to the discussion on that one.
Since we didn't review it yet, I haven't.
We have no control over.
That's my motion for the executive committee to review it, make recommendations, and the board can act on those recommendations.
Well, it's public information.
Public information.
A committee?
My personal feeling is there's nothing in the bylaws or anywhere that says that we have to post this document on the internet. There's nothing that requires.
But somebody else could.
Somebody.
So the presentation here tonight is official.
This was distributed to the committee tonight, therefore it is public information,
So
therefore it needs to be
there are
posted.
copies available for anybody who wants to walk one out.
They say you don't
We don't, there's a lot of documents come flying past this committee that come past the council that don't go on the internet.
So if you post it, could you not say it is a finding, preliminary findings, or the stated findings are being reviewed by?
Hold on, the motion's been voted on. All right.
The motion's been voted on.
Are we through with the issue?
Well, I think we brought up the point of
Well, I
order.
think
The
we brought up
discussion
point of order.
had its relation.
You answered my question, because after I'll abstain from my vote goes.
All right. I'm gonna take the chair back, if we're done. All right. Mr. Kuzma, you have?
Yeah, one public comment. You know, Jerry, I know you're worried, and some of you might be worried that I'm going to go and throw this up onto the internet. If I were that kind of person that would do something like that, there'd be a lot of stuff up there already. But that's not what I'm about. What I'm about is trying to get a neighborhood council that does what it's supposed to do and does its outreach to the stakeholders and complies with the rules and regulations for neighborhood councils. I'm not out here to destroy you, but I am out here to make sure that this council is operating in a fashion, as mentioned before, professional. That's all. I'm not running out and doing it, okay? Just so you know.
All right.
It's not me.
That issue's done. We're going to go to the next item of business.
Excuse me, hold on one second. I think this lady had something to say.
Just really quickly, I think just kind of a comment to your question on whether it needs to be, posted. I don't think we really withheld any information from the public. We're a public meeting, and this was discussed at our public meeting, so yes.
And whatever action that it will be in the minutes, so the discussion will be reflected in the minutes. Jeffrey, thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to item 9, which is board member comments, announcements, and agenda items. I'm going to start with Dr. Bob Luzak, Dr. Bob Hudson, Queen Cindy Lou. Everybody gets the title right. Mr. Mansfield.
Happy New Year, one and all.
Mr. Turmel. Valley Colstat. Valley Burst.
Okay, just a reminder, please put on your calendars for the Granada Chamber of Commerce installation and award ceremony Friday night at the Odyssey, February, I think it's